In the last video, we saw how easy it is to take your first steps with the Flow API using just what you already know from the collection and sequence APIs. We saw how we could use familiar operators on flows, so things like map, filter, and take. But because flows run on top of coroutines, they also provide some operators that are not available on collections and sequences, and that's what we're going to look at today. So first, everyone, give a big thanks to RevenueCat for sponsoring this video. There's a link in the description where you can read more about them. All right, let's take a look at some operators that are exclusive to flows. The most versatile operator that you'll find on flows is named transform. And this one certainly sounds like it would be redundant with map, but it can actually serve a wider range of use cases. And here's the big difference between map and transform. With map, the lambda returns the values that we want in its downstream flow. But with transform, the lambda calls a function named emit with the values that you want to send down the flow. So what you see here is effectively the same thing as what we had before when this was using map. So what's the benefit? Well, the real versatility of the transform operator comes from the fact that we can emit any number of values here. So when we simply are emitting a single value like this, it's the same thing as a map. But let's say that instead of printing out the dates, that we want to print out a schedule of events on each date. Well, I've got a function down here that returns a list of events that are planned for each date. Let's come back up here and simplify the code that we had in our last video by removing the filter and take. And now, instead of emitting a value for each date, let's emit a value for each event like this. And when we run this, we're going to see that it's collecting the events, sometimes more than one per day. Now, since we didn't emit the date strings themselves, all we see here are the events, so we have no idea when each event occurs. So let's also emit the header strings to separate the days. And with this, let's run it again, and we'll see the events under each date heading. So the transform function is incredibly versatile. We can emit 0 or more values from its lambda depending on what it is that we want to accomplish. In fact, the transform function is so versatile that it's actually used under the hood by lots of other operators, stuff like map, filter, and onEach. Speaking of onEach, the Flow API also supports a few other event-based operators that you're not going to find on collections or sequences. Namely, it includes onStart, onCompletion, and onEmpty. So here I've got some code that searches through an in-memory list of books. And you can see down here, we've got a simple book class along with a list of books. And then up here, I've got a search function that returns a flow, and that flow emits new book titles as it discovers them. And in the last video, we mostly used the flow of function, but I touched briefly on this flow builder as well. And we saw how it's structurally similar to the sequence builder that you might have used in the past. Well, this flow here will loop over each book in the list. It's going to delay 250 milliseconds for each one. And then if the title or author matches the search term, we're going to emit the value into the flow. And then up here in the main function, you can see I've added calls to onStart, onCompletion, and onEmpty. When we run this, we'll see the message from onStart is going to show up right away. And then as titles are discovered, they're printed in the collector. And then when the flow completes, we get this message saying that we're done searching. You'll notice that our onEmpty operator didn't run this time. And that's because onEmpty is triggered whenever the flow has completed without emitting any elements. So let's update our search term to look for something that it's not going to find. And when we run it now, we'll see that onEmpty is triggered. There we go. And that happened because our search function completed, but it didn't emit any results. So flows give us these event-based operators that you're not going to find in collections or sequences. Now let's take a look at one more operator that's exclusive to the Flow API. Because flows suspend, they're especially useful for collecting values over a period of time. And they can be set up to run forever. And it's possible that they'll emit values at a rate that's more frequent than your call sites might actually want. For example, in this code, we're simulating stock prices over time. Our data source here is updating the stock price every 500 milliseconds. And I'm going to run this, and we'll see those new values are arriving as fast as they're emitted. Someone who's day trading might really want to know the very latest value, so getting an update a few times each second might be exactly what they want. On the other hand, someone who just wants to show a rotating stock ticker at the bottom of their live stream won't want to get the updated values nearly as often. Well, we can use a function named sample to limit the inbound values so that our collector only receives an update every so often. So I'm going to change our main function so that we receive the latest stock value every 3 seconds. And now when we run it, we'll see a new value come out every 3 seconds instead of every 500 milliseconds. And you'll notice that this isn't just consuming all of the same values more slowly. Instead, it's the latest value from each sampling window that's emitted, and the others are just dropped. So those are a few of the operators that are available in the Flow API, but not in the collection or sequence APIs. There are others too, and many of those come into play when your emitter and your collector are running on separate coroutines. And that's what we're going to look at in the next video. Well, hey, the Kotlin community is full of amazing people who contribute to the Kotlin world in different ways. And the Golden Kodee Community Awards are currently open for voting. So head over to the public voting page. I've got a link in the description for that. And take a moment to vote for the people who have most inspired you. It's also a fantastic way to discover and follow Kotlin community members who you might not have noticed before. So go check it out. You can vote once in each of the 5 categories, and the winners are going to be announced at KotlinConf a little bit later this year. Again, the link is in the description. All right, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.